Hello, everybody. We are here in the second episode of Developers with Judith Böhlert. Did I tell that well?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Hi, Judith. So I met Judith while trying to evangelize the masses about Polypo, and we had a very nice conversation. She's a very active software engineer on social media, on LinkedIn, and I thought it would be interesting for our audience to uh, share your story, Judith, and learn more about it. So tell us a bit more about yourself.
Sure. Uh, I'm Judith. I'm a software engineer, as you said. I've been doing this full time for around 7 years now, and freelance since about a year ago. So yeah, I've been employed before that at different jobs, from like big corporations to smaller startups. And then last year I decided to give the freelance life a try, and that's what I'm still doing. And it's a bit of a roller coaster, but it's fun. And I like to kind of share my journey, I think, and really connect with people who are doing similar things or are thinking about taking this step as well. Yeah, that's it, I think. And I am based in beautiful, vibrant Berlin, Germany.
Awesome. Sounds like a wonderful place where to start. I made a lot of comments about your location where we met other times.
Yeah,
And,
true.
yeah, I'm curious precisely about this and your transition to a position where you are freelance from being an employee. What are the triggers that you observed in your professional life that brought you onto this path?
Yeah, good question. So I think I've always liked and enjoyed working in tech. So I really, really enjoy my job, and I'm super happy about it. I know that's quite the privilege to say, because I mean we do most of us spend about a third of our days on work, and I think it makes it so much easier if we do something we genuinely enjoy. But I've also realized that working in tech can be quite stressful, and that it's sometimes the environments are very high pressure and it's difficult to switch off, especially now with like going all remote and everything. It's very easy to feel like you need to be always on. And I think that's something I was really struggling with. And for me, I think after roughly 5 years or 6 years of doing this full time, I was just, I don't know if I was in a burnout or if I was close to one, but I was definitely not doing great. And I was just stressed and exhausted. And yeah, that's when I decided that I'm going to try freelancing. And then most people say, like, are you crazy? You're stressed and then you're going self employed. And I totally get that, because it is a different kind of stress and it's definitely not easy breezy. But I feel like I'm a little bit more in control again, that I can really decide how I want to work, and um, from where and when. And I have a little bit more control over my schedule again, also the kind of projects I take on. So even though I'm still quite busy and it's still stressful and high pressure sometimes, I am more in charge, I think, of my own path.
I can surely relate with this, Judith, with a different path onto my career that brought me to what I'm doing now. And I think that the revolution brought in by the pandemic actually changed the definition of work for many of us.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it happened to you as well. I would like to play a little game together, and that is you're pretty new in the world of freelancing, a different door to the world of software engineering. If you could come back, are there any things that you would do differently?
When starting my freelance journey,
Yes, exactly.
yes, definitely jump even a little bit sooner. So I think I made the decision to go freelance about a year and a half ago. And then I took like a little bit of a summer break, which I definitely needed, and I would do that again. But then after that, I tried to have it all figured out. Like I made countless, endless lists of just things, all the like tax deadlines that I now have to keep in mind, what even the different tax things mean, all like the legal things I had to figure out. And I tried to have it all figured out before I started. Um, And I think that's just impossible. You can never have it all figured out. And I think, like, in retrospect, I could have jumped probably 2 or 3 months sooner. It doesn't matter now. Like 10 years from now, it doesn't matter whether I started in July or in November. But yeah, I feel like maybe no, definitely I was scared. But I think, yeah, I could have taken that leap of faith a little bit sooner.
I I can relate 100% with that. I think it's helpful for people listening to this. It doesn't make any difference if it's September or July. I mean, in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of things. So that's a good advice. I You're on the journey of being a freelancer for a year, if I understand well, and I am, I think, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of software engineers or people in other professions could do this step in their career, but maybe there is something that is keeping them from doing so. What do you think is, and was maybe for you, the most scary step? Looking uh, looking down in a way to the world of freelancing.
Hmm. Yeah, good question. I think for me, and that's maybe a little bit unusual, but my biggest concern really was being lonely, because I was always like very, very close with my teams. And I think that was my biggest concern, that of course, as a freelancer, sometimes you still work in a team. Sometimes you also do a project completely on your own, but sometimes you'll still collaborate with other people, but you don't have that fixed team around you anymore. So like the people you work with, it changes quite frequently. And there's also, I would say, a little bit more of a distance between freelancers and, for example, the in-house employees. In some countries, that's even required by law. So I think that is something I was a little bit worried about, and that's also why I went straight to really finding and building a community. So that was like my main concern. So I really started this whole kind of building in public thing, documenting my journey and trying to find other people who are like 1 or 2 steps ahead of me. Because also in my friend circle, in my family, there's not a lot of self-employed people, definitely not any tech freelancers. So I didn't really have anyone to ask my questions to, and I had many, many, many questions. So it was really helpful to just connect with other people from the freelance tech community who could, yeah, give me advice on some things, and sometimes also just lend an ear when I needed to rant about German bureaucracy or something.
I didn't mention that, but it's worldly famous sometimes.
Yeah, for a reason, unfortunately.
I obviously cannot speak from my side because I'm Italian, so
Yeah.
that's not the best thing either. You touched upon something that I think many of the listeners are curious, and it got me curious into you, by the way. You're very present on social media and you communicate very well. Software engineers are not worldly notorious for being very open or sociable most of the time. How one overcomes the fear of communicating in public, and uh, what were your uh, go-to steps into getting, under the spotlight, if we can say that?
Hmm. I think for me, it's actually rather the other way around. I've always noticed that I'm quite good at communicating, I think, and especially like written communication, that just works well for me and I enjoy it. Like even as a child and as a teenager, I always enjoyed it a lot. And also I kind of ended up in this whole software engineering thing by accident. That was never planned. I always wanted to be like either a journalist or like an editor for novels or something. So maybe that's kind of where that all comes together. And by now I kind of like that I can combine these passions now, that like I can say like, okay, I like working in tech, but I also like playing with words and writing and being a bit more playful with it. And for a long time I thought I would have to decide like, am I a writer or am I a software engineer? But maybe I can be both, or at least combine the traits a little bit. And then for starting, it sounds cliche, but just start really. I
It is.
think
There is a
on
lot to it.
Yeah, I think on LinkedIn, I started with one random post at some point, and then I just kept sharing my thoughts here and there, completely without any structure or strategy behind it. And then at some point, I decided to try posting once a week. And then that was manageable, maintainable for me. And then I decided to post twice a week. And that helped me to be like a little bit consistent with it. Yeah, and then I really just like the idea of documenting your journey. I think many people underestimate how valuable their very unique perspective can be, because like we all have like a unique perspective on things, and if we just share that, there will be another person who can benefit from that, I think.
It's literally the story of how I got to know you, by the way. And
Yeah.
if I could add a cherry on the pie, it would be that talking about what you do and who you are connects you with other people that resonate with you. Uh,
Yeah,
some of the time.
definitely. Yeah. And I think
Um,
also that some people just overthink it a little bit. I would probably also add, especially at the beginning, to keep the expectations low. Like, don't expect to start posting and after 2 weeks having like 10 inbound leads. That's not going to happen. Like, find a way to enjoy the process, to enjoy sharing your thoughts and your story and connecting with other people. And then things like finding clients or getting inbound leads, that's more, I would say, like a nice side effect. But yeah, I would really focus a little bit more, probably even on the personal side, if you feel comfortable sharing it, because that, in my experience, tends to be what people relate to. Yeah.
yes, 1,000,000%. Trust the process, as they say.
Yeah.
Uh, you touched upon something at the beginning of this part of our interview conversation, and I think it would be very interesting for our audience to know that. You said that you ended in software engineering by accident, and I really like because I share a similar profile to the road you didn't take. So I went into like journalism and writing. That was my path
Oh,
originally. Yeah, I've been
cool.
a journalist in Italy for more than a couple of years. Uh,
Wow.
so yeah, like tell us more about that. How did it happen, and how it's the story of it's a love story at this point. So I'm curious about what did you find interesting in that?
Yeah. Um, I think I never really had the big plan for my life. So there's like some people who, when they're 12, they know that they want to be a doctor or I don't know, a musician or something. And I never really had that. I like one week I would say I'm going to be an astronaut, and the next week I wanted to be a journalist. And then after I finished high school, I had like a couple of ideas, but nothing where I said like, this is it. That's what I want to do. So I simply just escaped. I moved to London for a year and a half, and I worked in a bar full time. So uh, it was fun. It was a great time. But after that time, I really felt the urge to need to use my brains a little bit more again. And also the bar where I worked. Was kind of in the financial district in London. So I had like all these bankers come in for lunch and for their after work pint, and they would just come in and be like super confident in their suits and everything, and order a bottle of the most expensive champagne for lunch and have one sip and not even finish the bottle. And at some point I was like, I'm going to be like that. I'm going to be one of those finance bros. Um,
Oh
so
wow!
I somehow enrolled in a mathematics degree, and then I thought that maybe I want to go into finance. And then I realized I don't want that. Like, I don't know. I took a couple of classes on the topic, and I discovered that I don't like it at all. But I somehow still finished my math degree, and I had to learn the basics of coding in my first year, but really the absolute basics. And it was C and C++. So very far away from what I do now. But I just discovered that I like coding, and then I started doing it on the side a little bit. I had a couple of like part-time jobs as a student, which really taught me not only coding, but how to develop software in a team and how to get something production ready and ship things. Yeah, and then after my master's degree, I decided to pursue it full time.
Fantastic. The rest is history, I guess. Awesome, Judith. I this is the place where we talk about the future of software engineering. So,
Hmm.
the future of software engineering, there are a couple of things, and I think there is AI. We will touch upon that a bit later, but one thing I would like to use your brain and experience for is advise the people that are approaching this profession. And what would you suggest to a person that is in 2024 thinking about software engineering, approaching it? Uh, yeah, what would be your go-to process if you would start today, basically?
Hmm. Hmm. Good question. I think the best thing is always building something. Everyone tells you that, but I think that's also just because it's true. And I would also say focus on the fundamentals because software engineering, I think no matter what exact field you are in, is incredibly complex. And we get like one framework and library after the other that we all have to know. And I think it's very easy to get carried away by that and neglect the basics a little bit. So, for example, I'm a full stack developer or front end full stack, something like that. So I do like the whole Vue.js, React, Node.js thing, and then in the back end there's also a bunch of frameworks. Mm. And for that kind of path, for example, the basics that are important are HTML, JavaScript, or TypeScript, and CSS. So before you go and learn React, make sure that you learn HTML and JavaScript and really understand it and understand the concepts behind it. And once you can do that, I would really say like, yeah, build projects and then don't limit yourself, I would say, to one specific tech stack. I'm always like, one of my pet peeves is that I don't like it when people, for example, call themselves a React developer because that's like it puts you in this super narrow box. But if you're a React developer, it means you know HTML and JavaScript and CSS, and probably you know how to deploy an application and a little bit of CI/CD and DevOps, and you know all of these things. So don't call yourself a React developer. You're a software engineer and you can build things. And quite frankly, if you know React, then you can learn Vue.js or any other framework. So um, that's, I think, what I would recommend, to be open to new things, but also depending on what you like. Like some people enjoy going very deep in one technology and really becoming the expert in one specific tech stack, and other people are like a bit more T-shaped and generalists and enjoying learning new things every week.
Wow. Talking about new things, before we step into the magic AI world, I would like to ask if you spotted along the last year, last 12 months, any product, project, idea, person that you find very interesting and worth following or checking in?
Ooh, good question. Quite a few, probably. So definitely in my on my like LinkedIn network, there's a few people. Like in general, I don't think I have one specific name in mind right now. But what I find very inspiring right now is people who are somehow indie hacking or bootstrapping things. So
Okay.
I've spent like my fair share of time in the Berlin startup scene, and I love it. But I'm also starting to get over the whole VC drama a little bit. I'm always happy when a startup raises a funding round. I guess you can relate, but
Of course.
sometimes I'm also thinking like we are building SaaS applications, and I think it's really cool when I just see people hacking away in the evenings or on the weekend and really manage to make, not, of course, not massive steps, because without like big funding you can't go quite as fast, but just like this constant progress, and that they somehow manage to build something for the community, sometimes even with community support if it's open source, that's valuable. And that's what I find super cool at the moment. So like the
I
whole
think like
indie
this
hacking
is
bootstrapping
now.
scene.
On LinkedIn, there are a lot of stories being told about this now. So yeah,
Yes,
like,
exactly.
feel
Yeah.
free to get inspired. Uh, I would like to close up with one topic. In the future of software engineering, there is AI. There are a million opinions and scenarios out there. Not all of them, are sedimented and decided upon. So I'm going to ask here, what is your take on it? How do you use artificial intelligence? What do you think about it?
Hmm. So I use it. I use like an AI coding assistant or whatever it's called,
Yeah.
and it's definitely helpful. It's not life changing though, to be honest. And right now, I don't feel like this tool is going to replace me. Maybe at some point, I don't know, but I definitely don't think we are there. So for me, like these AI coding tools, they're good, but they're a bit more like, I would even say autocomplete on speed. So it's like, it's a fancy autocomplete. It's really cool. It can be very helpful for repetitive, manual, tedious tasks. Sometimes when I try to do something more complex with it, the code that's generated is so nested and complicated sometimes. It does work, but it feels like it's not maintainable. So I end up rewriting it and refactoring it anyway. So that's where I tend to be a little bit careful. But yeah, I think it can be a tool. And I think it will just mean that also the software side of software engineering will become more important, because that's, I think, always been my stance, that we are not really paid to code, but to solve problems. And I always, especially as a very front end heavy engineer, I like to really focus on the user and find out what the problem is that we are solving, and not just blindly implement something. And I think, especially with AI, that will become even more important. Like, use our time wisely, and maybe it will mean that as software engineers in the future, we will spend less time coding because AI will do a lot of it for us. And maybe we will spend more time really making sure that we got the requirements, that it really is what our users want, that we maybe, I don't know, optimize other things of the application a little bit. Yeah, and again, maybe that's kind of the full circle moment to also the whole posting thing. I think it just means that our personalities will become so much more important. So I think if you really are a good and kind person, and if you are a nice person to work with, that's not something AI can do, and then people want to work with you, I guess.
Wow, that was a great answer for a mediocre question, very generic. Thanks for that. And I absolutely loved the conversation together with you, Judith. I think it was very useful for the people listening.
Me too,
I
thank you.
recommend everybody listening this to follow Judith everywhere. She's absolutely amazing. She's very funny, actually, on LinkedIn. I love your style. So yeah, thank you for being with us, and to the next one.
Thank you, this was fun.